Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be taking a look at the 5 or more target Feral Druid rotation. This is once we start getting into that mass AoE element and start getting into just, you know, just the mass AoE stuff. I have skipped the 4 target video. That is mainly just because the rotation for Blood Talons stays pretty much the same from 3 to 4 targets. The rotation for, you know, like Apex and MOC, Feral Frenzy, again, stays pretty consistent from the 3 to 4 targets. You are just still rake spreading at that point. You are still swiping and whatnot. And you're still ferocious biting. Now, things do change once we get to 5 targets. So I am doing this video, obviously, for this reason. But yeah, hopefully this is a good video for you and hopefully you can learn a little bit, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Alright, so we will be starting out with the Blood Talons rotation. Now, not a whole lot changes for Blood Talons when we are going from that 4 target, or from the 3 to 4 target to 5 target. The Blood Talons rotation has been pretty consistent from 2 or more targets, where you start, you know, you continue raking, you start Primal Wrathing instead of Ferocious Biting and things like that. On 5 or more targets, and you'll have to excuse me here because I don't have a way to get 5 targets. I know that you can use like the Loveful toy. I know that you can use a turnip. I've tried to do all these things, but I'm really last 5 minutes. The Loveful toy I don't have because it's not Valentine's Day, which is very, very sad. Maybe if I hold off for another month, I can get it. But yeah, basically, looking at 4 targets for the Blood Talons rotation, or you're going to be like, you don't really change, right? You're still going to be just raking, you know, getting up to your Blood Talons, rake spreading here, and then you probably won't be able to rake on every single target, right? But your main focus is generating your Blood Talons and then looking to once you have your Blood Talons generated and then you've got Primal Wrath up and ticking, then you're just looking to rake as much as you possibly can and still continue that Sunfire Weaving mechanic, right? And I mean, your cooldown window can be slightly different, but really that's still what you're trying to do. And the best way to do this style is to generate your Blood Talons and then rake spread, right? So once you have your Blood Talons generated, then you're kind of chilling until you have to use your Primal Wrath again. And once this Blood Talons falls off here, so once I get up to 5 combos and then my Blood Talons falling off, I don't want to just keep rake spreading. I want to make sure that I generate my Blood Talons first, then I can reprimal again, and then I can look to be using my rake spreads now, and assume that this was just 5 targets, right? I know you can say, oh, but, you know, when do I want to start just swiping non-stop? You don't really do that. Like, you want to still continue to favor the rakes, and swipe is target capped at 5 targets. So it doesn't matter if you go from 5, 20 targets, swipe is still going to consistently do that same damage. Now, if you did have your cooldowns available, imagine you had your Blood Talons generated, you did have your cooldowns available, all I would be doing really if I was going to be going into a fight is I would be like Berserk, Tiger's Fury, Rake, Primal Wrath. You can like the big thing is you want to pre-rake, right? So I pre-rake and then I Primal Wrath again, generate a new Blood Talons, and then I mean, you can Primal Wrath again there, and then Convoke, right? So obviously I did that a little bit slower because I was just talking, but basically what I'm trying to do, and we got 3 bites there, okay, and we got 3 bites and 3 rakes. So basically if I'd been quicker there because I'm not talking, then what you're trying to do is pre-bleed everything up, right, with Primal Wrath, Rake, and Thrash, so that then when you Berserk Convoke, and you want to spread those rakes with Berserk because you're going to do more damage on each of those rakes, you know, 60% increase there from the Berserk. But what you do is you pre-spread Rake on it on a few targets, and then you can look to get your Convoke out. And the reason being, you do that for a few reasons, right? So, first of all, it means that you're doing fewer rakes during your Convoke window. Now, the benefit of that is that you're potentially going to get more Ferocious Bites or more Shreds, on top of the fact that the targets are already bleeding from your rake. So you're not losing any from that, you're only gaining more Shreds and more bites. And in that, we managed to get like 3 bites, which was okay. It's not fantastic. We want to aim to try and get like 5 or 6 bites if we can. The other being that with Conflux as our second conduit, we now do 22.5% or 20% increased damage during our Convoke window, which is going to be applying to all of our damage during our Convoke window. So if your targets are already pre-bled from Rake, then during that convoke window, that 4 seconds, all of your rakes are going to be hitting 20% harder on top of the abilities you're also doing with your convoke, right? So it's going to mean that just overall, you're doing a lot more damage than if you berserk insta convoke and then you just basically rake everything during your convoke and you waste, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7 spells on rake when, you know, potentially when instead you want to try and get those shreds and those bites. So if you can pre-spread rake, then that's great. Like I said, you would kind of go in and you'd kind of pre-apply, you know, you get your berserk up and rolling, you primal wrath, and then you kind of pre-spread those rakes, and then I don't know if I even bother like worrying about regenerating a blood talons, because your convoke can generate a blood talons during that window. So you saw that I think we only had like 1 or 2 rakes on that. We had like 4 shreds and 3 bites or something like that, I think was from that convoke. So you're getting a lot more benefit there from those shreds, like I was saying, because everything was bleeding from your rake there already. So if you could do those things, that's really great. Obviously, you're still applying the, like similarly in the 3 target, you're still going to be finding opportunities to be, you know, sunfire weaving and doing that. And then it's just about just getting your rake spreads. And I definitely prioritize keeping Primal Wrath up over spreading rakes. So the most important thing is that your Primal Wrath is always ticking, then that you're spreading rakes, and then sunfire weaving. Obviously, sunfire weaving is going to have the most benefit on uncapped AoE. So obviously this is a 5+ target rotation. If you're on 5 targets, then rake spreading might still be better than sunfire weaving in general. But once you get up to say 10, 15 targets, which can happen in Mythic Plus, depending on how you're pulling, then that's when the sunfire is going to have massive value, because it's going to do, behind Primal Wrath, it's going to do the most damage because it's uncapped compared to a capped rake or a capped swipe at 5 targets. Sunfire weaving has the most kind of potential outside of Primal Wrath. So that's kind of the blood talents rotation there for you. Hopefully that was a little bit of insight, but it doesn't really change too much from the 2 target, the 3 target, 4 target. It's just now the sunfire weaving has more importance, the rake spreading has a lot of importance, but the Primal Wrath and the sunfire is king. And then during your berserk window, you want to pre-spread your rakes like you would generally with your other rotations. All right, so this is where things start to get a little bit interesting now. So if we're going to be looking at the rotation, we are going to be looking at, say, Feral Frenzy. All you're doing with Feral Frenzy is using it in moments of, I don't know, you can kind of basically just use it on cooldown, like whether you're on single target, 5 targets, it's still kind of just a good way to get 5 quick easy combo points, super good energy efficiency, and then it just alludes to a free finisher. So you can use it at the start of combat if you say have 0 combo points and you go in Feral Frenzy to immediately get you up to 5, and then you can get a Primal Wrath on everything or whatnot. But it's pretty self-explanatory. Like, you kind of just looking to use it on cooldown. You don't really want it to just be up and sitting and available waiting for anything in particular. The thing with Moment of Clarity, then, if we are playing with Moment of Clarity, and you can play Saber, like this is now the Apex, you know, MOC Feral Frenzy build, basically the non-Blood Talons playstyle. So you can take Saber. It is very, very good with Apex. It's very good on Tyrannical weeks. It's very good in, say, The Other Side or Theater of Pain, just in general. And yeah, so you can take Saber, but I'm playing with MOC. Now, this is where the rotation kind of gets interesting for the MOC playstyle, because whereas you would want to be raking on, say, 1 to 4 targets with MOC, and you'd want to be biting, you want a Primal Wrath, bite, or at least, you know, Primal Wrath, bite, Primal Wrath, bite, right? You get into kind of those rhythms. Once you start to get to 5 or more targets, like 5 is kind of the cusp where maybe you don't want to be ferocious biting anymore, and maybe you don't want to be necessarily raking anymore. So looking at this rotation, right, if I compare the damage of swipes, so swipes hitting around about 1,000 damage per target, depending on if it crits or doesn't crit. Now, obviously, the more targets you're hitting, well, like, you have a unique chance on each one of those targets to be critting on each of your swipe casts, right? Whereas if you rake, you have that 1 chance per tick per target affected by your rake, right? Whenever anything crits from your swipe, you're going to generate 2 combo points. So the energy efficiency, swipe and rake are both the same energy. So suddenly, once you start to get to, like, you know, well, once you're on, like, 3 or more targets, 4 or more targets, the value of swiping starts to really kind of come to fruition. Especially once you get to 5 or more targets, you're pretty much guaranteed to be critting on a mob, at least one of the mobs. You're going to be getting really good combo point generation from your swipes because of this. It's also hitting around about 1,000 damage per target. Now, it is capped to 5 targets, so you're going to be hitting around about 5k on average per swipe. Now, each rake is going to be doing, like a rake is something like 7k damage or so over the course of its full duration, and we can look at that in a second. But because of the combo point generation of swiping, you're just going to have really good value for getting in more finishes during that window. So this is where swipe kind of edges out just raking up every single target. Also, just a minor thing, but it can be very difficult sometimes if you've got a bunch of targets stacked up to kind of track your rakes depending on how your UI is and being able to see where each target is with their rakes and whatnot. So sometimes just swiping and avoiding mechanics and just playing that more simplistic rotation can be very beneficial. So this is where just swipe kind of spamming can be pretty good. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're maintaining your primal wrath. So when you're going into fights here, you want to make sure that you are just maintaining that primal wrath, because obviously there's your apex proc, so you're going to be getting your bites. So it's very good to be maintaining your primal wrath there. Now, once you get to like mass AoE as well, once you get onto like 10-15 targets, say you're in Arden, the Arden Wield section of the other side, or Mists of Turner Scythe at the end of the dungeon, or Necrotic Wake just throughout, really, then you're going to be pulling quite a few targets, and this is where your primal your apex can be proccing a lot, and it can be proccing very regularly, right? So it can be very good to kind of just be maintaining your primal wrath first and foremost, getting up as many finishes as possible to fit in additional bites if necessary. But once you're kind of at 5 targets, that's where I would probably just be primal wrath spamming, because your primal wrath damage is going to be somewhat comparable to your ferocious bite. So on average, a ferocious bite, I mean, non-crits are going to be doing about 5 or 6k. Crits for me are doing around about 10k or so. So let's say that I've got 30% crit chance. Let's say that in general that I'm not going to be critting. So they're going to be doing around about, like, let's say 7k damage or 7.5k damage on average, right? Whereas primal wrath per target hit is going to be doing around about 850. So that's going to be your initial hit damage. On 5 targets, you're looking close to that 5k mark, right? So on 5 targets, but this is the difference, right? On 5 targets, primal wrath is only costing you 20 energy, whereas ferocious bite is costing you that pooled 50 energy. So the value of primal wrath just spamming instead of doing any ferocious bites starts to occur around about 5 targets. I'd say 6 targets for safety, 6 or more targets for safety, but around about 5-6 targets, this is where you can start thinking about just not even ferocious biting at all, and just instead just primal wrath spamming. And then whenever you get a free proc of your apex, that's when you can look to get your bite out there, right? So around about 5 or so targets is where you're going to be looking to do that. Now, if you're playing Sabretooth as well, then the value of your bite is going to be even more, your bites are going to be even more valuable. So maybe you'd start to be looking at 6 to 7 targets rather than the 5 to 6 or more, right? You'd probably be shifting to around about 7 or so targets where you kind of stop biting, because that bite value is so high. But I would say as well, like, what you can still do on 5 targets, you can still kind of, if you have like a priority target, let's say you're on 5 targets, but one of those targets needs to die, then you should still rake that target. You should still make sure that you're raking that target, and probably still putting ferocious bite. As long as you have rip on every target, then you can still look to be putting in ferocious bites into that target. Now, something also that you can consider is if you're looking at swiping, you're getting great combo point generation value from swiping on 5 or more targets. But once you have 4 combo points, it doesn't matter whether this last combo point generator is a swipe, a shred, a threat. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's still only, it doesn't matter if it crits or doesn't crit, you're still only going to get that 1 combo point. So you could swipe twice, rake, swipe twice, rake, and just be spreading your rakes slowly over time, like that way. But in low level keys, your target's probably going to be dying before you get massive amounts of value from that. But that is something that you could be looking to do. and then, you know, in moments of having high energy, that's when you can squeeze in a bite. And then if you're low on energy, then you don't do the bite, and you just kind of primal wrath spread. Once you start getting to the mass AoE, so let's say you're on 10 or more targets, I just wouldn't be biting unless you get an Apex proc. And then I would just be swiping and you're kind of in a sense holding, you're kind of holding globals, waiting for that primal wrath proc or the Apex proc, because you know it's going to happen from your primal wrath. And basically all I'll be doing is just primal wrath spamming, because it's gonna, you know, it's gonna be hitting so hard, around about 1,000 damage per target. You know, 900 or so per target, and on 10 targets, I mean, it's uncapped AoE. It's way better than just getting those ferocious bites with or without Sabertooth. You know, it's going to be very, very high value to be getting those primal wraths just on the initial hit plus the bleed. What else to mention? Yeah, so you can still be kind of, I would probably start to stop rake spreading. I would still Sunfire Weave, even on large AoE. Now, the thing with Sunfire Weaving, if you are using Apex, is when you're shifting out of, you know, cat form. Look, right there, I get an Apex proc. And so you run the risk of getting double Apex procs. Now, the risk of getting double Apex procs on anywhere from, like, you know, 1 to 4-ish targets is probably pretty low of getting, you know, if each of them are affected by primal wrath. Like, the chance of that happening regularly is not very high, right? So you kind of, on, you know, 1 to 4 targets, you can probably still Sunfire Weave and it'd be okay. Once you start to get to, you know, like, once you're at, like, if you're at like 10 targets and you Sunfire Weave and everything's affected by your primal wrath, you have a really high, you got what, like a 40% chance of tick that you're going to be getting some kind of or you're going to be getting an Apex proc. So that happened twice in a row whilst you're doing that Sunfire Weaving, that 3-second or so Sunfire Weaving. You know, it's something to think about. But at the end of the day, the more targets there are, then, like, the more value you're gaining from your Sunfire. So I think it can still be worth. And if you're low energy, then I think it can still be worth. So, yeah, just something to consider. Hopefully this video, I mean, okay, let's look at what you kind of be doing with your kind of cooldown rotation. Now, again, I would probably spread a few rakes, like, during my Berserk, and then you can just Convoke. You don't have to worry about your Blood Talons or anything like that. I mean, how many bites do we get there? We get 5 bites, 5 shreds, bada bing, bada boom. That's cool. You can look to, on 5 targets, you can look to either, like, rake spread, or you can look to just shred Primal Wrath, like, shred Primal Wrath, right? And what I do, even if I get 4 combo points, if I shred and I only get to 4 combo points and I'm on mass AoE and I'm berserking, I'll just shred Primal Wrath, and I feel like that's more value than rake spreading, if I'm not using circle and stuff like that, right? Because I'm not gaining as much value from my rakes because I'm not playing circle, but I'm gaining more value now from my shreds because I'm getting the extra 15% damage from my MOC. So I'm getting more value from my shreds, plus I'm getting the extra 60% damage from the Berserk window as well. And it's just an instant, like, 5 combo points, right? So I can shred primal. And I feel like that damage on mass AoE is really, really good. Now, if I'm still only fighting 1 to 3 things, then I probably would Berserk and I still would spread rakes, right? But if I'm on mass AoE, 5 or more targets, if I can shred Primal Wrath, that's going to be some really, really good damage, because your Primal Wrath is your uncapped damage. So that's going to be way more value on 5 targets than swipe spreading. So you definitely want to be berserking during those situations. But hopefully I've kind of gone into the rotation quite a bit here for you. Hopefully this has been a helpful video. If you have any questions or comments or anything you want me to go into further detail in, please let me know in the comment section down below. Make sure to, like, subscribe and give the video a like and all that stuff. But one last thing as well is I am still doing these coaching videos. I am going to be releasing some of these on YouTube for you guys to check out as well. But if you want to submit your own video of Mythic Plus, or of you raiding, I am now going to be doing coaching of raiding as well. I feel like, you know, my logs and my understanding of the fights are at a point now where I can kind of start doing some of that. So some of you have probably progressed beyond me in raid, depending on how good your guild is and whatnot as well. But it's something that we can at least have a discussion about if you send in some coaching VODs to my channel. If you want to get more information on that, it's going to be in the Discord link in the description, and you can submit your videos there. But thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.